the organisers for inviting me along. Thanks everybody for turning up. I'm not going to sit here for 10 minutes reciting my CV, but I have been working on these issues for quite some time, this intersection between national security and individual freedoms. I'm also a lawyer as well as an academic, and in 2011 I spent 6 months in Washington DC researching this connection between the line between individual freedoms and civil liberties and national security. And there's some very good people in the United States working on this issue in the belly of the beast. The issue that we're dealing with here is one that communities and countries all around the world are dealing with, because this push for the security state and this erosion of people's freedoms is a global phenomenon that's happening everywhere. I want to just start, and I've got sticking to my notes, because as a university lecturer, otherwise I'm hardwired to speak for an hour, and I wouldn't want to do that to you. But let me start 250 years ago. 250 years ago, a group of 4 men acting on behalf of the government of England broke into the home of a political writer, I suppose somebody who these days would be like a modern blogger. And this guy's name was John Entick. These people spent 4 hours trashing his place and left with hundreds of documents and other items. They had a warrant empowering them to, quote, make strict and diligent search of Mr. Entick's house. Mr. Entick sued them on the grounds that you can't just go and search the house of somebody you don't like to see if you can find something to incriminate them. And he won. And that case was the starting point for the issues that we're dealing with here today. That what was established was that you can only conduct a search when you have reasonable grounds that you will find the particular things that you are looking for. That was a very, very important precedent, and 30 years after that Entick and Carrington case, the judgment formed the basis of the 4th Amendment to the American Constitution, the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. In New Zealand we have no constitution. The best we've got is a weak Bill of Rights Act. But in this Bill of Rights Act, and in line with legislation in comparable societies, we do have the right to be free from unreasonable search. If state agencies breach that, then they can be sued in court. And that was the basis for my kind of entry into law when in 1996 I caught 2 SIS agents breaking into the house of Aziz Chowdhury. A lot of you will remember Aziz at the time of the APEC Trade Ministers meeting here in Christchurch. And then the police subsequently, well, the SIS subsequently planted a fake bomb by the city council officers, but they won't comment on whether or not they did that. And then they searched my house for bomb-making equipment. So I sued them on the grounds that they didn't have reasonable grounds to believe they would find the bomb-making equipment there, and I won because I had a right under the Bill of Rights Act to not have my house searched unreasonably. But I knew they had searched my house because I was there. What happens if you don't know? And this is the big thing. Agencies like the SIS and the GCSB operate in secret. So when they conduct searches, the people who are the subject of those searches or that surveillance simply don't know what's happening. And as Murray said, the oversight of them is so minimal as to be non-existent. In 1996, the break-in at Aziz's place took place only 2 weeks after the SIS Amendment Act was passed. And in conjunction with the SIS Amendment Act, we were told that we had this new oversight procedure. We had established the Office of the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security. So if you ever had a problem, you could go to this person and lay your complaint with them. So Aziz and I were the first complainants to this good Office of the Inspector General. The Inspector General's report wouldn't even confirm or deny whether the SIS was involved in the break-in, and blandly concluded no law had been broken. Subsequent court cases found out that there were 2 unlawful acts by agencies of the state. An outrageous thing to be going on, and the Oversight Committee didn't even know it was happening. So the oversight there is absolutely non-existent. Now the GCSB has lived even further in the shadows than the SIS until recently. The primary arguments against the GCSB and the Anti-Bases Coalition and Murray have been leading a valiant fight on this, and lots of other people over many, many years. The arguments against them were related to objections to New Zealand being effectively used by bigger powers, particularly the United States, to gather intelligence for their global military strategy, for essentially the US-driven global military strategy. This is the strategy that sees people executed without trial by drone attacks. This is a strategy that shuffles people around the world in the dead of night in legal no man's land, in places where they can be tortured and incarcerated without trial. This is a strategy that fabricates evidence of weapons of mass destruction to justify invading other countries, and so on. So the arguments against the GSB were those sorts of arguments. Basically, the GCSB did whatever America told it to do. And I think part of it was that this all emerged at the time that New Zealand had the big rift with the United States over the nuclear ships policy. And that was the big one that we saw up front. But behind the scenes, we were desperately trying to assure America, yeah, we really, really are on your side. And so we'll go the whole hog and the whole GCSB thing and give all this information to you and hand it all over. But it got stuck. It all came unstuck when the Americans told them to get Kim.com. And they, of course, unquestioningly obeyed, and then it all became unravelled. And it came unstuck because Tim.com was not the right sort of person to mess with. And there was a small matter that the GCSB was specifically prohibited from spying on New Zealand citizens and residents. And this is what, for years, the protests at Waihopai protesters were being told, don't worry about this, we were not spying on New Zealanders because it's very clear we don't spy on New Zealanders, we won't spy on New Zealanders. And then the government response was, we didn't actually realise we weren't allowed to do that. It's a bit of a grey area. We didn't realise we were allowed to do that. And this is always the government's response. Whenever any of these shadowy agencies get caught, there was always the same response. When the SIS got caught breaking into Aziza's place, we didn't know you weren't allowed to break into people's houses. We thought we were allowed to do that back since 1977. And so that's what they'd been doing. From 1977 to 1996, they had been illegally breaking into people's houses. We didn't know we were allowed to do that. We better change the law to retrospectively make legal what we used to do. When the police got caught using illegal surveillance techniques during the Urewera terrorism raids, we're not allowed to use surveillance things like, sorry, we thought we were allowed to. Our advice said that we were allowed to. Then the law changes to enable them to do it. The GCSB gets caught spying on New Zealanders. We thought there was a bit of a grey area with some of this stuff. We didn't know that we were allowed to do that. And each time the justification is that this is just clarifying the law. This is just formalising and tidying up normal practice, normal accepted practice. So what we see in each of these cases, I think, is a deliberate strategy of ratcheting up the powers of these surveillance and intelligence organisations. They act with contempt of the legal restrictions. They overreach them, they push it up, and then if they do get caught, we move the goalposts and we allow this to happen. Now, when you're working in this sort of area, when you're supposed to be trusted, when you're an agency that doesn't have normal oversight provisions and so on, you're supposed to be the one agency that is beyond reproach. You know, you can have scummy stuff going down in various government departments, but these ones have to be absolutely squeaky clean. So wouldn't you think that if there was a grey area, and the grey area was along this line of where your powers are in relation to people's individual freedoms and privacy, wouldn't you think you would err on the side of caution? Wouldn't you think if there was a grey area, you'd think, I better not go there, I'll only go where it's clear that we're allowed to go. The opposite is happening. They act with impunity. They act with contempt of the law. They have no respect for people's individual freedoms and liberties, and they are now operating in a context. They're now operating in a context where so much of, when the Cold War ended, there were places in Eastern Europe where there were Stasi headquarters. There were warehouses full of paper. They needed to get commercial paper machines to munch all the stuff up because they were so obsessed. Eastern Germany was so obsessed that they had every letter written by little Johnny to his grandmother in case there was something in it, and nothing could go without being. They had all these steaming machines and all these mountains of paper. These days, surveillance is so much easier. Nobody writes letters. Everything is electronic. All our behaviour, all our lives, all of our consumer lives, things that previously we wouldn't even have written down, we now send by text or by Facebook posts or snippets like that. It's all digitised, and it is so easy to monitor technologically. And now we find out from Snowden that that's what they're doing. They are so obsessed by this that they have to capture every little thing and store it in a great big vat. So at any time, in 10 years' time or whatever, somebody comes to their attention, they can trawl right back. They're prepared to stand up and make a stand and stop this sort of attack. Well done.